This week's mostly complaining about people being negative on the internet. I know it's really being negative, complaining about. Complaining is the same thing you're complaining about, but I don't care. This is my podcast. Welcome to the show, Edwin Salmon of Knowledge. This is the podcast, Edwin Salmon of Knowledge podcast.
Hey, salmon skins, and welcome to the show. I'm sorry it's a little bit later than normal, so maybe some people listen to this in the morning. Based on my demographics and the hits that I'm getting, every time someone listens to it, I get a, hey, good stuff, comes on my phone. No, that's not true. No one listens to it in the morning. As far as I can tell, it's not the sort of thing that I guess people want to listen to. And I listened back to my last episode and I swear to God, swear to me. Okay, sorry, Batman. I swear to Batman, the first 9 minutes of it were atrociously bad. I'm so sorry that they were so bad. It's not my fault. I was tired and I didn't realize how boring it was. And I felt like in the description of it, I felt like saying, listen to the first 9 minutes on like double speed or 1.5 speed, because you can do that on Spotify. You can listen to stuff on 1 point. I've listened to stuff on 1.2 speed, which is like slightly faster. I do think, and I do remember Stephen Colfer from Dream Gun, who was on an episode of Reviewables, which was my old podcast, which there's still a couple of 160 episodes or something of Reviewables up online. But when we had Stephen Colfer in, he talked about how he liked to listen to podcasts on 1.5 speed, simply because he could get through them quicker and listen to more podcasts. It wasn't that he felt that the hosts were talking too slow. It's that he wanted to listen to more. He would I just want more. Give me all. Shove them in my ears. So I was thinking of that. And I was thinking of how people, you know, they don't have any time these days. And it frustrates me sometimes when I hear people say, oh, I wouldn't watch a 2.5 hour movie, but I will binge 14 episodes an hour each of some fucking piece of shit show that everyone is watching right now. And I'm not talking about Squid Game because I haven't seen it, so I can't say to its quality. But I will say this: it exists and it will continue to exist. It's going to be probably up on Netflix forever. Does that mean that I'm eventually going to watch it? Probably. Does it mean that I'm never going to watch it? Also, maybe, probably. You know, Game of Thrones is a show that everyone enjoyed, and I haven't seen it. And that's not because I'm so cool that I want to be not part of the cool gang and watch Game of Thrones. I do like to watch things when they finish. There's a couple of times where I've seen shows that I've truly enjoyed, and like they've been on maybe a couple of seasons, and I've sort of binged all of those seasons and then watched them on a week-to-week basis. I do like the way some streaming sites have a kind of a weekly rollout. I couldn't think of the word there. Upload? I guess they're uploading them and rolling them out. And they're dropping them too. These are all the parlances of our times. Like the Mandalorian was a show that was every Friday, and I think if they just dropped the whole or uploaded or down sized or rejigged or blipped, that's one I'm coining. If they just blipped the whole season, it kind of works. If they just did that, I don't think it would have been as good a show and as enjoyable a show, because it was a little bit Planet of the Week and Villain of the Week and Job of the Week. Like, what's he going to do now? He's going to help out his old friends in order to get a thing so he can go on to the next thing. Kind of like video game rules in a way. But if you binge watched every episode of it, you'd just be like, oh, this is just too boring. Not boring, but too samey. It's like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is a great show. Don't get me wrong, I love the show, but I remember watching it and I could only watch maybe 3 episodes, and then I had to kind of give it a break because it's essentially the same thing. Now, you may be saying, Ed, isn't everything essentially the same thing? Didn't you learn in college all those years ago a tiny bit of knowledge that you're now going to dump on us here? You're blipping it out on your podcast, that there are only, 7 stories. Actually, maybe I'll put a link to it in the description of this podcast, or just look it up. If you look up Kurt Vonnegut's story structure, he's got a great little video. The science fiction novelist, although I don't want to call him a science fiction novelist, he just wrote great fucking books, and they were funny as well as being science fiction-y. And he kind of does the sort of the story structure and the stories that people know, and a lot of them are based on the fairy tales, some of which I have been reading out in previous episodes of this podcast. But yeah, there's only so many stories that you can do. And if you have a 22-minute comedy show, it is all about the structure, and it's kind of repetitive. And like, Curb Your Enthusiasm was like, the episodes would be like, I used a knife to butter, and I just I wiped it on my sleeve and I put it back in the drawer. It's like, it's a clean knife. How, and then someone else goes, how is that a clean knife? That's not how you clean a knife. I think that's how you clean a knife. I don't think it is. I think you should apologize for not cleaning the knife properly. Well, I think I cleaned it properly. Well, I don't think you did. And so on and so forth. You could kind of see the setup, and I guess that's the nature of that show being largely improvised, that I just couldn't take more than 3 or 4 episodes, because then all I'd see would be the structure of it and not the content. Now, The Sopranos was a show that, to my mind, and this is not a hot take, this is quite the lukewarm take. This is a fucking tepid, sitting in a pool for 10 years take. I think The Sopranos is the best show on television, or was, and still is. I've started rewatching it. Haven't got to the end of the first season. I was trying to rewatch it with Cara, but she sort of lost interest. And we have been watching other stuff. We've been watching Ted Lasso, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to just rant a little bit about the way people view things and the way things are processed nowadays, which kind of annoys me a little bit. But like, we're gone from the times where, there were TV events and people would watch television. I remember a friend of mine who has relations in New Jersey, and he would go over to visit them. And this was during The Sopranos, and it was, I don't know, I think from the first season, it was a huge hit. So it was like second or third season of The Sopranos. And whatever night it was on HBO, Sunday night, whenever it was, the city of New Jersey was deserted. Like, everyone was watching The Sopranos. It's like if you drove through Offaly when Pure Mule was on TV, and just all of the towns were deserted. Eden Dairy, not a soul in it. They're all inside, glued to Pure Mule. What's going to happen next in Pure Mule? Oh, that's Pure Mule, that show, as nobody in Offaly says. But that's my table creaking. I shouldn't lean on my table as I'm making my points. But everyone watched the finale of The Sopranos, and it was a big deal. Same with Breaking Bad. It was a kind of it built up. And like now, obviously, all of these shows are available to stream, and people will stream them, and they'll be done, and it's over. And these things are kind of a time and a moment. We're living in, and again, that's another thing that annoys me. As I say this, I immediately feel like an old man complaining about a simpler time. And it's not that it was a simpler time, it was just there was less stuff out there to watch. And, I mean, I am 44 years old, so I do remember a time before the internet, a time of top loading VCR machines, a time when you'd have to wait months for the latest American films to come to our shores because they'd be delivered by boat, because airplanes hadn't been invented yet in order to transport movie films. But now, because of social media and a lack of attention spans, see, just as I'm saying this, I really do sound like an old man. But it's true. It's like people have to watch something while it's hot and while it's trending, and then we just gobble it all up and move on to the next thing. Which is why, I mean, look, of course I'll watch Squid Game, but, there's all these think pieces and all this kind of, it seems that if you just make good stuff, then people will watch it, regardless of if it's from Korea or wherever. And I would say, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of stuff that my father-in-law, Tom, enjoys that's not in the English language. It's all about sexy Mexican cartels and Colombian cartels and Peruvian cartels. Some of it's like telenovelas, soap opera stuff, which, to be fair, is fascinating to watch because it's so far removed from, your Coronation Streets or your fair cities. Jesus, would you give me some of them drug pills? How many of those drug pills are you selling tonight? Oh, would you lay off? I've only got 14 drug pills left, and me drug dealer friend wants them. Listen to me's. Yous are taking too much of that cocaine. I'm going to come around and shoot you with the gun. Drug City. Drug City is the city where people take lots of drugs. Cocaine goes up your nose, into your brain. You talk shite for hours. This week in Drug City, things are happening with the drug supply and they're not going well. I'm sorry, I didn't realise the drug supply was so important to you. Of course it's important to me. Aren't I a drug dealer, haven't I? You are? Oh, God. But you're my brother-in-law. What happens if my sister, whom you are married to, finds out that you are the biggest drug dealer in the town of Drug City? I don't care what Sheila knows. Sheila knows what I tells her to knows. As long as I keep that stuff going up her nose, if you knows what I mean. Oh, that's too many noses. Confused. Here, take this and put it up your nose. No, I don't want to do that. Maybe if I rub it on my gums, it might numb them and stop me from talking so much shite. Oh, it's all shite talk here in the Drug City. So that's the Dublin version of those Mexican and Colombian sexy drug shows that my father-in-law watches. And like those are things that are not trending now and have never really trended. He is not watching Squid Game. Like everything he watches with subtitles. And, there is this thing of like people saying, yeah, look guys, things aren't made just in English for you to enjoy. There's stuff from around the world and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, fuck off. Random Twitter person that I've just invented. But that's the kind of tweets I saw. And, it's like if you're not watching Squid Game while everyone else is watching it, does it even get watched? You know what I mean? It's like when Tiger King was trending at the kind of beginning of lockdown, and that was a show that everyone enjoyed, and everyone kind of was talking about it as this is a lovely escape from the shit that's going down right now. And then there was a debate about whether it was exploitative and so on. And then there was like podcasts about it, and it was like, and now no one even really remembers it, it comes up as a quiz in in Zoom quizzes that nobody's doing anymore because everyone's out in the real world. Even though we're teetering on the edge of maybe another possible lockdown because cases are rising and, people are out socializing. Hey, I've been one of those people. I was out drinking with a number of comedians, and it was nice because I was the youngest there because they were all in their sort of early 50s, and I felt like a young buck until the next morning when my head was fuzzy, like an old fuzzy man's head. And I want to hope that because I'm out doing gigs again and I want to book a tour for next year and I want to get out and do stuff. And if it all goes to shit again and all collapses again, then it's going to be hard to take because it's been tough, guys. And, doing this podcast has been great for, getting the silly, stupid thoughts in my head and venting them into your ears. And I thank you for listening. But it's not something, I'd rather do it in a live situation, in a face-to-face kind of way. And, hopefully I will. Now, I do have a gig that I did in Mount Mellick in Laois last week. I recorded it on my phone. I will be putting up sections of that on my Patreon page. Also on my Patreon page, there is an extra episode of this podcast every Sunday. And there are video pods that no one gets to see except my patrons. And, if you've been listening to either Edwin Salmon of Knowledge or Reviewables or the Cine Stream Club, which is my other podcast, and you've been enjoying the content that I have been creating for free, you feel like, buying me a cup of coffee or a pint probably because it's $5. $5 a month is all you have to pay, and you get every extra that's already up there. There's like 160 extra things. About 90 of them are episodes of Edwin Salmon of Knowledge without any ads. So if you feel like doing that, then you can. And when we return, I will continue to rant in a hopefully funny way about the things that annoy me. So we're going to take a little break. Hey guys, welcome back to Edwin Salmon of Knowledge. Thank you for returning, and thank you for listening to all of my rants and angry splurges. Now, I have noticed something, talking just about how people consume things and how people relate to content, and also IP, which is something that is not something I would have ever considered as a phrase when I was younger, because like I was saying, things were different when I was younger. You had to wait months and months for movies to come from America to Ireland, and you'd hear rumors about what these movies were. I remember hearing about Ace Ventura: Pet Detective being the #1 movie in America, and I just thought, that's ridiculous. I don't want to see that movie. That sounds like a piece of shit. And then, of course, it arrived and I saw it, and it heralded the genius of Jim Carrey upon our lands, for which we are eternally grateful. And, there was no commentary, there was no early reviews, there was no trailers for it even. You couldn't go anywhere and see them. Like maybe you saw a trailer for something on a TV in between the ads or something, but now, you don't even have to watch ads on TV. If you just pause a show as it begins or record it and then watch it an hour later and fast forward the ads, you don't even have to watch ads. But the design ads now that if you fast forward them, you still get what the ad is and they still get into your brain and you still end up buying cheesy poofs or washing powder or sneakers or cat food or whatever it is that we're selling. I mean, you can, if you're listening to this on 1.2 or 1.5 speed, you probably heard the ads much quicker. Or if you just do what I do and just kind of do the 15-second skip or 10-second skip or 30-second skip or whatever the skip is, and skip past the ads like a playful schoolgirl skipping rope with her school chums as she sits down to eat a nice jam sandwich. There's a blast from the past, huh? Schoolgirls eating jam sandwiches. You don't get that anymore. But there's a couple of things I noticed this week, and just the way that the internet seems to champion a lot of the time the negative aspects of content. And I'm using content here in a very glib way, because when I talk about the content, I'm talking about the content of movies, movie content, full-length feature films that hundreds of people work on. And they are ridiculed and dismissed before they're even made or as they're being made. Like the number one thing I saw this week was a lot of people seem to be up in arms about Timothy Chalamet. I suddenly remembered my Chalamet, who is playing Mr. Willy Wonka of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory fame in a prequel movie called Wonka. And it's a musical, and it's directed by Paul King, who directed the Paddington movies, Paddington Bear movies. Paddington I've seen. Paddington 2 I have not seen. And that was famously the greatest movie ever made, according to Rotten Tomatoes, which is the aggregate score meister for movies on the internet. But what that does is, like, a lot of people put a lot of heft and weight onto Rotten Tomatoes, but it's basically just fucking movie reviewers online, and they just get all the reviews and put them all together and give you like an average rating based on that. So it's very subjective. It's not like it can be manipulated in such a way. It's like the way any statistics can be manipulated to show a positive or a negative outcome depending on how it's presented to you. And, but this is the guy who made, let's, for the sake of argument, the greatest movie of all time. Better than Citizen Kane. I mean, Citizen Kane had a sled, but did it have a talking bear that wore a jacket and liked marmalade sandwiches? No, it did not. So take that, Citizen Kane and Orson Welles. But it's got a good cast. Timothy Chalamet, people like him. Obviously, he's no Gene Wilder. He's definitely better than Johnny Depp. And he is playing a young version of Mr. Wonka, the chocolatier. Olivia Colman is in the movie. And I can't remember who else. You Google it. But people just saw, there's no footage of this movie. There's just, they know that this movie is being made. And the tweets from some people were like, who asked for this movie? No one asked for this movie to be made. Not me, anyway. And I'm like, look, Hollywood doesn't give a fuck about what you want. It's like, yeah, they do market research. But number one, as the screenwriter William Goldman, who wrote Princess Bride, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He wrote a number of books about Hollywood, which are really good. If you get a chance, check out William Goldman's books. Goldblum, not Jeff Goldblum. He's not. He's Goldman, not Goldblum. He's not a flower of gold. He is a man of gold. Goldman. He's a man who's made of solid gold. And he wrote a book where he said that nobody knows anything when it comes to Hollywood. Nobody really knows anything. It's guesswork at best. And sometimes, someone like George Lucas, for example, will make something that everyone thinks is going to fail, but it turns out that's what everyone wanted to see at that particular time in history. In 1977, people didn't know exactly what they wanted, but they go, all right, he's taken samurai stuff, he's taken cowboy stuff, he's taken space stuff, action serials, and it's very much the bad guy wears a helmet and all black, and the good guy is a blonde, white guy. It's about race. It's about Richard Nixon, apparently, he said afterwards. But I think that was him just applying the politics of the time to the movie. But it's very basic kind of a hero story. And also he hit on a kind of the technological aspects of movies were pushed to the limit and beyond. I mean, they invented so much stuff for that movie. But when everyone saw it, they were like, oh yeah, this is it. And everyone was like, oh, queuing up, saw it 7-8 times. Like Star Wars, when it came out, was still in the cinemas when the sequel came out 4 years later or 3 years later, whatever it was. So, but no one knew, and no studio wanted to produce it. But then when it came out, it was like, oh, this is it. This is what everyone wanted to see. Same with The Matrix. The Matrix hit at a certain time, 1999. Again, technology pushed technology a little bit further. It showed things that had never been done. And it took from anime, manga, what's the name of that band? Slipknot. It took from all of those, drug culture, internet culture, and leather, sunglasses, all these things that were, in the zeitgeist. And people didn't know that it was coming, and they didn't know that they wanted it. They just were like, holy shit, this is it. This is the movie for us. And again, that was a difficult sell. But that was artists, God, I'm calling George Lucas an artist. But it's true, who kind of have an idea of what they want to see, and they think that it's not out there, and this particular type of entertainment doesn't exist. So they take all of these influences and they just put them up there. It's kind of like in the same way that Tarantino steals from, all of these great genres and filmmakers, and to the point where Uma Thurman is wearing, she's basically cosplaying as Bruce Lee in her own movie, but not in a self-conscious way. She doesn't know she's doing it, but the audience kind of knows, and Tarantino definitely knows. All right, but it works. He's stealing, but making everything his own, and that's what these people do. So nobody fucking knows what they want. I think the problem with, and like case in point, The Matrix, when it came out in 1999, was the same year as The Phantom Menace. And everyone was like waiting for The Phantom Menace and had an idea of what The Phantom Menace was going to be, because they had seen Star Wars movies, and the Star Wars movies had been playing in their heads for years. And I, when it came out, was convinced somehow that it was going to be great. Like, oh, you can't fuck up a Star Wars movie. But boy, howdy, did he fuck it up. And like, it's bad. It's not, would I say it's terrible? Not terrible, but it's bad. And he didn't know, Lucas didn't know that The Matrix was gonna steal his thunder, and it did until they made the sequels, and then kind of got bogged down in their own philosophy. But the first Matrix is still brilliantly paced, just a great movie to watch. But anyway, back to Chalamet. So pictures of him emerged, and people were, oh, this is going to be the worst movie ever. And they've only just started making it. And it's got a good pedigree, and I'm kind of like, sure, but like, give it a chance. It might be the greatest movie ever made. You don't know. And also this week, there was a review of the new Ghostbusters movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is directed by Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, who did a number of movies that are good. Thank You for Smoking, Young Adult, I think he directed that one. Up in the Air, that's a good one. And he famously, or maybe not so famously, made a cameo in Ghostbusters 2, where when Ray and Winston are like doing their Ghostbusters dance at a children's birthday party, and he's the kid whose birthday party it is, and he's like, oh, I wanted not the Ghostbusters. I can't remember who he wanted, He-Man or something. Was that it? Was He-Man a thing in 1989? I know I was into He-Man. And that's a show on Netflix as well, coming soon. Everything's been rebooted. But like, people complaining about IP and intellectual property, by the way, that's what IP stands for. I said it earlier on, but I didn't explain what the acronym meant. If you want an hour of fun acronyms, listen to the latest episode of the Cinestream Club with myself, Trevor Brown, and Andrea Farrell, available wherever you get good podcasts. Anyway, Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters, a big movie for me. I saw it when I was 5, maybe 6 years old, in the cinema. It scared the shit out of me. Like the ghost at the beginning in the library, she was fucking scary, man. And then the dogs were kind of scary, and the notion of transformation and possession, which is not something I had come in contact with, was scary. Now, the one thing that didn't scare me but confused me, because I was only 6 years old, was the bit where Dan Aykroyd is having a dream where he's getting a blowjob from a ghost, and he's like in the Civil War or something. And because remember years later, I'd seen it a few times, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this scene, because it happens very quick. It's part of a kind of a montage where the Ghostbusters are busting ghosts and things are going well in the business, and he's having a dream, and you see his pants be unzipped, and then it cuts back to him writhing around in the bed having the dream. I think he falls out of the bed, so he's having like a wet dream. But is that something, like, I don't think any 6-year-old should be sitting watching a big screen, and on that screen is the actor Dan Aykroyd writhing around in pleasure as he has an erotic dream about a ghost giving him fellatio. I don't think that's a good thing for kids to see. But he is in the new Ghostbusters movie, and Winston Zeddemore and Peter Venkman, all those characters, Sigourney Weaver playing her Dana Barrett character, and everyone except Rick Moranis' character, I think, is appearing in this new one. Obviously, Harold Ramis, who played Egon Spengler, passed away, unfortunately, like 2015 or something. So he's not in it. The characters in it are his grandkids, and Paul Rudd, the ever youthful, ever charming Paul Rudd, is in it as their school teacher. And it has this, there was a lot of positive reviews of it, and people saying, yeah, it tugs on the nostalgia, it tugs on the heartstrings. It's a worthy sequel to Ghostbusters 2, because a lot of people, myself included, did not like the Ghostbusters reboot thing they did. And that's nothing to do with the quality of the cast or the director. I think it was more the script was terrible, and they tried to make it up by doing a lot of improv. And you can do a lot of improv, and there's improv in movies that are very good and very funny, that also star some of the actors from the Ghostbusters 2016. Like Bridesmaids is a very funny movie, but it's very well written and very well structured. And, you know, once you do that, you're just adding icing on top of the icing on the cake, or a cherry on top of the double icing. Whereas with a badly structured, badly written movie that didn't have a clear villain, who was the villain in the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot? Think about it for a second. If you've seen the movie, who is the villain? We don't know. I can't even fucking remember. So you're just adding shit on top of a cake that's already made of dung. So you've got a shit dung cake with a little rabbit pellet of shit on top in place of a cherry. So everyone is kind of leaning on that, oh, why can't they make original movies anymore? And I say, well, look, a fucking $1 billion plus was spent watching actors playing superheroes running around for 3 hours. You know, everyone goes to these Marvel movies, and everyone, and I know like some people who are complaining about the Ghostbusters movie online, and I'm like go to the movies. You know, you're probably illegally downloading a lot of stuff or just streaming stuff and not even watching it, and now you're just jumping on the negative bandwagon. Because negative, like I said, there was a lot of positive reviews, non-spoiler reviews of this movie, and it was in The Guardian. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a Guardian review, and it was really bad. Like, it was like a 1-star scathing review, and those are fun to read when the movie is actually kind of bad. And I'm not saying that Ghostbusters Afterlife is bad. It's probably watchable. It's not like the greatest movie ever made. I don't think it would claim to be. But this reviewer, it seemed like he had his sword sharpened to plunge into the chest of this movie for quite some time. And he gave away a little bit of a spoiler. Now, it was a sort of a non-spoiler spoiler, if you catch my drift, where he talked about the kind of moral implications of showing a character who is played by an actor who is dead. And he's obviously talking about Harold Ramis. Egon Spengler is, I would say, going to appear as a ghost in this movie, because, to be honest, it would make sense. You're not going to have a movie about Ghostbusters where ghosts are real and not have the one Ghostbuster who is deceased show up as a ghost. It kind of makes sense, even though, you know, he's talking about the moral implications and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on, man. I don't know if he felt as bad about Peter Cushing appearing in Rogue One as Grand Moff Tarkin, because it looked terrible. What were the moral implications of that? I don't know. But it just seemed everyone's just jumping on, oh yeah, it's negative. So to my mind, it seems that, you know, negativity and the gleeful rubbing of hands in anticipation of something failing seems to be the go-to kind of thing to jump on the bandwagon. I don't know, but I say, like, wait until Wonka comes out and watch it and make up your own mind that it's good. And wait until Ghostbusters Afterlife comes out and watch it, or don't watch it. But people who take one reviewer who obviously just wants people to read his fucking review, and they go, oh yeah, I thought so, definitely not going to watch that now because someone else has made up their mind. And actually, I'm a little bit guilty of that, because to come full circle, I mentioned Game of Thrones there, and it's something that I haven't seen, and not because I'm too cool to not see it. I know I'm not cool, and I don't need to not watch something in order to confirm my non-coolness. But I do remember someone telling me, "Oh wait, it was the internet." But everyone seemed to be very annoyed at how Game of Thrones ended, and if something ends very badly, I am a little bit wary to begin watching it. It's like I remember watching, and I wasn't told this at the time, but Battlestar Galactica, the rebooted series of Battlestar Galactica. I remember starting that series. It finished completely, and I had it on DVD. Got it off my brother, and I was watching it. And then at a certain point, it just got bad. But I'd watched so much of it that I had to kind of finish it. I was like, well, I've watched over half of it, maybe 2/3 of it. So I have to get to the end. And the ending was awful. And it was awful watching it. Now, these days, I'm much more likely to sort of forget about something and just, all right, look, I'll just move on. This is a waste of my time. But Game of Thrones, like, I know when it's good, it's really, really good. So I might watch it for those really, really good episodes. And unfortunately, all the kind of shocking, I know people die all the time in it, and I actually know some characters that do die. So I don't know if that will diminish my enjoyment of it. Probably will. But I'll get around to it eventually. I mean, I know Sean Bean doesn't last beyond the first season, and he was kind of one of the main reasons I wanted to watch it. And then, who told me? My other brother told me, oh, he dies at the end of the first season. I don't know why he said that, actually, because he wouldn't normally spoil shit like that for me. Anyway, Ted Lasso is another one. Ted Lasso is a show that is so successful that people are hating it now. That's a true measure of success. If people start to say that, oh, it's not very good anymore. And I honestly find it to be a good show, but myself and Cara watched the season finale of it, and it was a nice little season finale. But the problem I have with Ted Lasso is, oh, hello. Sorry, I just whacked the microphone stand there as I was moving my arm to accentuate my point. But yeah, Ted Lasso had a lot of patchy episodes. There's an episode that was written by Brett Goldstein. I think it was episode 6 or 7, I can't remember. But the one that he wrote by himself, and it was in season 2, and it was maybe one of the best episodes of a comedy drama show that I'd seen in a long time. It was just a really good, solid episode that moved all the characters on, the revelations, and it was great. And then the following episode felt a little bit flat, and I said to Cara, I was like, maybe that's just because the previous episode was so good. By comparison, this one seems bad. But no, it was. We realized afterwards, well, actually, when you think about it, the previous episode set up this kind of revelation, and the kind of emotional walls had fallen down on a couple of characters, and you're like, all right, we're really getting into the psyche of these people. And then it didn't go any further than that. It just kind of fell flatlined. It plateaued a little bit. So I think Ted Lasso is plateauing. And I do know they've only planned 3 seasons of it. And if it goes on beyond a 3rd season, it will only have Ted Lasso as the main character, and then it'll be completely different. And I think that's a good thing. I think more shows should have 2 or 3 seasons and be done, and stop milking, And I say this as the 84th episode of my podcast plays in your ears. I have 90-something episodes. This show will be completely rebooted very soon. You will be able to enjoy the new episodes of Edwin Summit of Knowledge. I will be doing seasons on specific topics. My first season is going to be all about the movies, and I'm going to be doing it on the technological advances, on the history of acting, and other things as well. My favorite movie openings and why they're so good. So they will be available early on my Patreon. So if you want to support me, you can by either giving me a $5 a month. That's what it is. You get for a $5, you get every piece of bonus material that I produce, and you help me out by putting food in my infant son's mouth and my own sometimes if I get enough. You can also support me by just giving me a review on Apple. 5 stars. Ed's great. Thanks for the rants and the lukewarm takes, and I'll be your friend forever, for all times. So guys, that is the end of this week's episode. If you want to become a patron and support me on Patreon, go to Edwin Salmon of Knowledge on Patreon. Just look it up. It's the name of the podcast. There's a little hint for you. And you can support me for a $5 a month. You get all the extra bonus material, including a Sunday bonus podcast, which is at least a half an hour long, if not longer. I will be reading from my book in progress and also talking about where I get my ideas from. My life, generally. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. And be safe out there. Wear a mask. Get vaccinated, you fools. And I will talk to you very, very soon. If you want to check out any other podcasts I'm involved in, the Cine Stream Club has new episodes out every fortnight. Bye.